Hermetic principle of correspondence, then you're in the right place. I'm about to present you with science to better help you understand the supernatural in the planes of existence without having to bring this information together yourself. So I understand that, like me, you find the scientific explanation of principles to be satisfying, and not having any science to back up your beliefs can make you feel unprepared to explain why you believe what you do. But don't worry, because today I'm going to share with you the science behind the Hermetic principle of correspondence. And I want to start with this scripture from the Bible that I think illustrates my intention to share the science of my beliefs as well as having a better understanding of what I believe. So it's from First Peter 3:15, and it reads, "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and be ready to answer. Be ready always to give an answer to every man that asks you uh, a reason of the hope that's within you with meekness and in fear." And this does have a whole lot of meanings, but this is just one that I'm using. So in the first video, we talked about mentalism and how we could derive it from natural science. So moving forward through the Hermetic principles, we're going to be looking at the principle of correspondence. And much of the framework of the Hermetic principle is established by the principle of correspondence. So this principle may be the most important to understand next to mentalism. The two formulas that summarize of the principle of correspondence are: what is within is what is without, and what is above is what is below. So the formula above and below has to do with the mirroring of the higher spiritual planes in correspondence with the lower physical planes. So the word supernatural, according to dictionary.com, is an adjective that means of, relating to, or being above or beyond what is natural or unexplained by natural law or phenomena, abnormal, of, pertaining to, the characteristic of, or attributed to God or deity, of a superlative degree, uh, preternatural, a missile of supernatural speed. This is what we refer to as the higher planes of existence. Let me just check my connection real quick, y'all. Okay, cool. So, as you can see in the definition, these planes are beyond what we consider the physical plane. Much of the science that was discussed in a previous video describes and establishes the supernatural planes. The second formula of this principle, as within, so without, refers to how the inner world of the mind manifests and materializes to correspond with things in the external physical world. So the question here is, how are these formulas connected? The world above and the world below, and the world within and the world without, may seem separate but they are indeed the same. So how can this be that the world above, or the supernatural world, be connected to the supernatural world within the mind? So beneath space-time lies our inner world. Beyond our minds, however, lies still lies mental space in the rest of what's beneath space time. This is what Carl Jung refers to as the collective consciousness. Carl Jung's theory is the collective unconscious. He believed that human beings are connected to each other and their ancestors through a shared set of experiences. We use this collective consciousness to give meaning to the world. A majority of what lies beyond our consciousness is the collective consciousness. So, what we're going to talk about is how this principle can be derived from physics as well as the things it implicates. There are certain facts about introspective consciousness that correspondence makes sense of. Introspective consciousness is conceived as it was by Locke and Kant as perception like awareness of the subject's own current mental states and activities. We can make immediate sense of the correspondence of supernatural mysteries beyond space time in the space time realm in which physical events exist when this is realized. From this framework, we can rationalize the supernatural realm. This is also known as the three planes of existence. Sri Aurobindo developed a very different concept of the mental plane through his own synthesis, Vedanta, Tantra, Theosophy, and Theon's ideas. In this cosmology, there are seven cosmic planes, three lower corresponding to the relative existence, the physical, vital, and mental, and four higher representing infinite divine reality. So we talked about how consciousness emerges from space-time in our last video. The Kybaleon talks about planes, and certain planes have a definition very similar to the description of a world in which quantum states exist outside of physical space-time, or a world that exists beyond the physical world. So here's a passage from the Kybaleon that talks about this quote. At the beginning, we may as well consider the question so often asked by the neophyte who desires to be informed regarding the meaning of the word plane, which term has been very freely used and very poorly explained. In many recent works upon the subject of occultism, the question is generally about as follows. Is a plane a place having dimension, or is it merely a state or condition? We answer no, it is not a place nor ordinary dimension of space, and yet it is more than a state or condition. It may be considered as a state or condition, and yet the state or condition is a degree of dimension in a scale subject to measurement. End quote. So from here, we can see it is not a place comparable to a place in space, yet it is also referred to as a condition, yet it is not a condition in itself. So according to this definition, a plane is not a plane in the sense of being a proper definition of a plane. This matches the idea of Hilbert space. Although Hilbert space has a place in reality, it is not literal space in the sense of the world. Remember, Hilbert space exists outside of space and time, and what we would call the natural realm. We could refer to Hilbert space as being synonymous with the supernatural realm, or that which is above and beyond the natural realm. They are physical space-time, or the world within physical reality, or Hilbert space, which is also space-time, and the world beneath, which produces space-time. Unlike the conventional understanding of what we call the supernatural, both Hilbert space and the supernatural are different terms in science and defined clearly with detail, leaving no room for confusion or doubt. Basically, with physics and science, we can describe the supernatural world. When we consider mentalism, this makes sense. So, the physical space time world we live in is being constructed by a deeper layer of a reality that is in combination of thoughts of the all, including the world that is within the mental constructs of our mind. All another way to look at this is as a game. If we are in the world of a game, there's another world operating beneath the game that is on the hard drive. So the supernatural realm would consist of the world, the program, and the hard drive. This is in respect to the players who are in the natural world of the game. So this analogy is a direct representation of the law of correspondence. So an object within the game would be in correspondence with the supernatural code that it is simulating. Therefore, the hard drive is where the world resides, and anything that exists in the game corresponds to whatever is on the hard drive. So in Hilbert space, below space-time are the patterns of quantum entanglement, the that corresponds to the objects in the physical world in space-time, as well as space-time geometries. The emergence of the physical realm from the quantum realm have to do with the pattern of entanglement encoding the quantum world. This is the scientific way of saying as above, so below. A supernatural deep reality is what corresponds with the natural reality. So now the understanding of correspondence will be reconstructed. Quantum cognition and the concept of space time can help us achieve this. Oh, you know what? I thought I had oh yeah, there we go. Something about quantum cognition. Because I just found that visuals can kind of just make it a little bit easier to understand. Um, and they're just, I guess, more appealing to the eyes. Better to look at. Anyway, um, so when it comes to the corresponding of the mind with physical reality, we are talking about as within, so without. So we know that space-time refers to the realm of physical reality. Hilbert space is beyond space-time and is what space-time emerges from. It is in superposition that the quantum states exist in a domain of reality or Hilbert space, which is simply a quantum probability space. Quantum cognition applies to the mathematical formalism of quantum theory to model cognitive phenomena such as information processing by the human brain, language, decision making, human memory, concepts and conceptual reasoning, human judgment, and perception. Quantum cognition shows the correspondence between quantum states in superposition in the inner world of thoughts and emotions through a precise mathematical connection. Let's use the example of making a purchase. So even after all of the relevant information is known about the item, we will still look at the alternative choices. So fuzzy logic is an approach to computing based on degrees of truth rather than the usual true or false. And this is the type of behavior our minds exhibit if our minds behave like quantum superpositions. So in Hilbert space exists the quantum states of the inner states of the mind. So the existence of our introspective mental minds existing as quantum states in Hilbert space is a profound implication. Our minds, our emotions, or thoughts have no definite place in space time. Despite that, we know that they have a real existence in space time. However, the emotions exist in Hilbert space beyond space time, as with the origins of everything else. So, this makes sense of the as within, so without phrase. So, the thoughts and emotions of the inner world are simulated in the external physical world of perception. So, the world above corresponds with the world within. So Hermes made a statement pertaining to the soul that makes sense when you think about the soul being referred to as supernatural. He said, so in essence, outer space emerges from inner space. So two questions arise from this. Get a drink of water real quick, y'all. That is, if the exterior world is produced by our inner world, then why are we not aware of everything in it? And the next question is, why is it that the exterior world can't be influenced by our minds, or seems like it can't be influenced by our minds? So, the answer to the first question about our awareness of the external world being limited has to do with the collective unconscious. Excuse me, y'all. Collective unconscious refers to the unconscious mind and shared mental concepts. It is generally associated with idealism and was coined by Carl Jung. According to Jung, the human collective unconscious is populated by instincts as well as by archetypes, ancient primal symbols such as the Great Mother, the Wise Old Man, the Shadow, the Tower, Water, and the Tree of Life. Jung considered the collective unconscious to underpin and surround the unconscious mind, distinguishing it from the personal unconscious and Freudian psychoanalysis. As far as the second question goes, the external world is influenced by us. However, the influence is so small, minute, that it often goes unnoticed. So we used the definition of the world word plane from the Kybaleon earlier, describing a state, condition, or dimension. But in its proper sense, it is none of these wholly. A mental state is the condition or state of mind of the person and is the term often used to describe our thoughts and emotions. The reason beyond our physical universe is just as much of an owner of our thoughts and emotions as us. So, another argument that arises out of this thought is that all quantum states are not our thoughts and emotions, even though our thoughts and emotions exist as quantum states. So basically, what's being said in this argument is that all is not mind or mental or spiritual in Hilbert space, and that there is something else. Here's the problem though. First off, quantum states in superposition are not different from thoughts and emotions existing as quantum states on a fundamental level. If that were the case between mental quantum and non mental quantum states, we would have to make a clear distinction. However, the implication of mentalism tells us that other states are also quantum states. And if there is no dissimilarity between the physical nature of quantum states and the physical states, this would be the only explanation to logically follow the implications. So there are three planes of reality described in the Kybaleon. These are all preceded by the word great. Let me get this up. But I don't have them up here in a form of being described as great or whatever. So the great physical plane, the great mental plane, and the great spiritual plane. The principle of correspondence will show us what these planes are or are referred to. So the field of perception collapses from the wave function, as well as the reality we call physical refers to the great physical plane. So the physical plane includes space-time that we are in. The split of the contents of the mind is found beneath space-time in Hilbert space. So the contents that are a subset of these thoughts is referred to as the great mental plane. The subset of the contents constituting emotions is what's referred to as the spiritual plane. So in ancient Egypt, these planes were understood. In addition to these three planes, there are planes of vibration that are also known. You can think of Hilbert space as a pool of possible infinite frequencies and wave functions that have their frequency within that pool. This means that there's a possibility of other space times that than the one we currently exist in encoded in the Hilbert space in the form of other vibrations. So this makes sense when you think about a passage that comes from the Kybaleon. The differences between different manifestations of matter, energy, mind, and even spirit result largely from varying degrees of vibrations. The higher the vibration, the higher the position in the scale. That is surrounded by quotes, by the way. Uh, Forgive me for not starting or ending the quote. So, oh, I'm sorry. This was actually the beginning of the quote. My bad. Actually, no, that was too, but this is the beginning of another quote. So, no. I'm sorry. That was the beginning and the end of the quote. Sorry about that. So, this idea was proposed concerning dark energy and dark matter. Dark matter is a hypothetical form of matter thought to account for approximately 85% of the matter in the universe. Its presence is implied in a variety of astrophysical observations, including gravitational effects that cannot be explained by accepted theories of gravity unless more matter is present than can be seen. For this reason, most experts think that dark matter is abundant in the universe and that it has a strong influence on its structure and evolution. Dark matter is called dark because it does not appear to interact with the electromagnetic field, which means it does not absorb, reflect, or emit electromagnetic radiation and is therefore difficult to detect. In physical cosmology and astronomy, dark energy is an unknown form of energy that affects the universe on the largest scales. The first observational evidence for its existence came from the measurements of a supernova, which showed that the universe does not expand at a constant rate. Rather, the expansion of the universe is accelerating. Understanding the evolution of the universe requires knowledge of its starting conditions and its composition. Prior to these observations, it was thought that all forms of matter and energy in the universe will only cause the expansion to slow down over time. Measurements of the cosmic microwave background, or CMB, suggest the universe began in a hot Big Bang, from which general relativity explains its evolution and the subsequent large-scale motion. Without introducing a new form of energy, there was no way to explain how an accelerating universe could be measured. Since the 1990s, dark energy has been the most accepted premise to account for the accelerated expansion. As of 2021, there are active areas of cosmology research aimed at understanding the fundamental nature of dark energy. So, modified Newtonian dynamics, or MOND, is a hypothesis that proposes a modification of Newton's law of universal gravitation to account for observed properties of galaxies. So, it is an alternative to the hypothesis of dark matter in terms of explaining why galaxies do not appear to obey the currently understood laws of physics. So it is the gravitational influence associated with dark matter. Its origins is from the principles of the underlying degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom is basically a measurement used that doesn't use just kind of like a true or false thing, but the degree of freedom or the truth is going to be based on the degree, also referred to as fuzzy logic. So, um, it is the gravitational influence associated with dark matter. Its origin is from the principles of the underlying degrees of freedom. Degrees of freedom in physics and chemistry refers to the parameters used to describe a physical system, such as a chemical composition and pressure. The minimum number of fixed parameters required to define a system or the dimension of its phase space is known as its degrees of freedom. It is from the emergence of space-time that these degrees come from beneath. The specific degree of freedom being referred to here is that of entropy. Entropy is a scientific concept as well as a measurable physical property that is most commonly associated with a state of disorder, randomness, or uncertainty. So, what provides good predictive support to this theory is modified Newtonian dynamics that have accurately predicted the ratio of matter to dark matter. The accurate measurement of the speed of gravitational waves compared to the speed of light in 2017 ruled out many hypotheses, um, which used modified gravity to rule out dark matter. So the description of what's going on beneath space-time by using degrees of freedom is abstract. Although the degree of freedom is an abstract idea and most frequently mentioned in statistics, it is very applicable to in the real world. A better way to describe these degrees of freedom would be often seen as the difference between things that are on and associated with their own vibrations. Basically, there are other planes of vibration as well as other things that exist. Let me get this picture back up. All right. So, a more uniform, non clustered distribution of dark matter could spill over into the cosmic microwave background or the Big Bang's residual radiation and produce a unique signature. It could even affect the formation of larger scale structures like galaxy clusters. It could also perhaps have an effect on gravitational waves. So when other planes leak over into our reality, gravitational waves are produced that influence our space-time. This is what dark matter is the effect of. So the big gaps between galaxies, as well as a majority of the universe being made of dark matter, is what this is talking about. In fact, researchers have been able to infer the existence of dark matter only from the gravitational effect it seems to have on visible matter. So dark matter seems to outweigh visible matter roughly 6 to 1, making up about 27% of the universe. So, the many supernatural beings that exist in our religions, including gods, demons, archangels, angels, and many other beings, exist on these supernatural planes. The realms of the outer world, for example, heaven or hell, are planes that the supernatural could be attributed to. So these supernatural beings are indeed super. However, that does not mean they are to be worshipped. The only being worth worship is the all. Another way of saying this is worship is deserved by the creator, not by the creation. Although these supernatural beings dwell outside of space time as agents with lots of power, they don't contain all of reality within them, making them not as powerful as the one who is above all. So, supernatural entities, as well as the three great planes of existence, can be explained with the principle of correspondence. So, if you're interested in discovering more about the science of the Hermetic principles, then be sure to check out this playlist that I put together, breaking down the science of each principle. At the first link in the description, I also have a book. Well, I don't have a book, but there is a book in I believe the second link of the description that breaks down it's called the Quantum Hermetica, and it breaks down all of the quantum science behind hermetics. Also, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss more videos helping you with mental alchemy and more. And check out this playlist of my top 7 videos on the science of the Hermetic principles. And I'll see you in the next video. Take care.